Hello everyone, my name is Nerijs and it's a pleasure to be here. So today I'll be presenting work I did together with my colleagues Denise, Linus and Kathal. It's about changes of income inequality in Lithuania, and specifically we wanted to know what drives these changes, whether it's a labor market structure, people became unemployed, is it because of returns, so higher wages, is it because demographics changed, or is it because policy changed? The reason we looked at Lithuania is because it was subject to very large inequality fluctuations. Here you see the Gini rise from 34 to 37 during the boom period, then it fell by about 5 Gini points, and then it rose again. So we see very pro-cyclical behavior. These fluctuations are much higher than what you would see in European Union, and the level itself of Gini is very high. So it's interesting to study this. Additionally, it's
why is it
only half slide?
Yeah, there's something wrong. I think it's because it's a PDF slide, I think.
Yeah.
With PDF it gets this weird.
Okay.
Do you think it's, let's see if we can, do you have the original slide?
No, just this. Oh, we can make it not 220.
Yeah, make it smaller, yeah.
Can you change the size?
Yeah. Make it 100, yeah. Good.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah. So here you see the fluctuations in Lithuania and in European Union, right? So this would be the first attempt to decompose income inequality in such a way in Eastern European country. That's why we undertook this challenge. Another is that in Lithuania was subject to many factors at the time. So we had the financial crisis like elsewhere, but we also had policy reforms before and after the crisis. And we also had, throughout this whole time, a huge migration issue. About 18% of our population left the country, and an aging phenomenon. So we really wanted to know which of these factors drive it. And that's why we use this technique. And this technique is actually developed by Denise Sologon a bit earlier, and this is the third time to attempt this technique. So first it was done for Luxembourg, Portugal, and now it's for Lithuania. So a bit about the method which Denise created, right? Our aim is to take the whole household disposable income distribution and decompose it into 4 factors: the demographic, labor market structure, returns, and tax benefits. And then, once you have these 4 factors, all you do is substitute one for the other and recalculate the income distribution, and that way you get a counterfactual. So you would know, for example, how would income inequality look in 2015 if it had the demographics, labor market structure, and return structure of 2015, but the policy in 2007. So you can have the switch. The new thing about this method that was developed is that it takes into account both market incomes and all the policy phenomena, so you can have quite a big overview. Okay? To do this decomposition, we need 2 things. First, we need to have the whole household disposable income distribution, and we need to have a counterfactual, right? How it would look like. So to get the counterfactual, we need 2 components. The first one is a series of hierarchically structured equations, which compose of basic observable characteristics, so the age of a person and its education, for example, a vector of parameters saying how much these characteristics translate into income, and third, residual, so everything that's not explained by that. And from this you can create your disposable income distribution. And additionally, you need to know something about the rules of the transfers and the taxes that people have to pay. So once you know how you have the market incomes and you have the taxes, you can have the whole disposable income. These are the income source components that we model. So we have 5 here. First one is YHL, so that's labor income. And notice the hierarchical structure here. First, we have to model whether a person works at all, so that's YLAB-HI. Then see if that person is employed or self-employed. And in each case, we see the income that a person gets from employment or self-employment. So every person can be only once at once. but then you add this up for the whole household, and then you get household's labor income. Second one is capital income. Again, we have whether a person gets any investment income or property income, and how much of this income he gets, and property and investment together are capital income. Third one is other types of income. So this can be either like a private pension income, or it can be inter-house transfers. And then the other two big ones are benefits and taxes. So here you just sum that together. Taxes also including social security contributions. To get the equations, we of course need parameters. The parameters you see again that they depend on the type of income you model. So for labor incomes, you need to have the probability that a person works, the probability that he's employed or self-employed, and the occupation he's in. Other things, you also need to have a probability and the level he gets. For the tax benefits, we need really the rules that tell how much, with certain characteristics, taxes and benefits a person gets. And this we all get from Euromod. Euromod is a tax benefit simulator that allows you plugging in the numbers of market incomes, and it gives you how much taxes or social contributions a person pays. So it's very convenient for us in this way. A bit more about the parameters we estimate. We estimate quite many of these parameters, and they really depend on the type of income and the type of equations we use. For example, for market structure and presence of income sources, so to say in which industry a person works, in which sector, we use a multinomial logit model. For the wage distribution, we use a sigma-Dalla distribution. For the residuals, we use Jura-Dahl, so we have quite a different combination of this. For everything else, we just have probits and a simple regression, log linear model regression. Okay. Once we have all the parameters, then we can generate a income generating process. We can represent an income generating process for each household. So we have the model here, which shows that income Y depends on observable characteristics X, on a vector of unobserved characteristics, which are residuals, this upsilon. Then we have the psi, which is a vector of parameters, which we estimate, and the parametric structure. And together, this for every single individual, we can show how his income is composed of these three parts. And then by substituting any of these parts, for example, taking a different epsilon from one year to another, we can make a transformation to see how the labor market structure would look in a different year, how the price return structure looks, or tax benefit, and so on. Right? So let's look at each of these transformations individually. First one is the price and returns transformation. All we do here is we change the epsilon for those based on the returns that people get. So for example, we make sure that they get higher, if they get a higher wage in another year, we substitute this, and we see that. Same for capital income. And then all we do is subtract the original distribution. We take the original distribution, and from that we subtract the counterfactual distribution with the different parameters for price and returns, different price and returns parameters. Then we have a change. So we can either take a change of the whole distribution or just a summary statistic. So this, in this case, this theta f could be the Gini of the distribution of f. For labor market structure, we also change the xi parameter, except here we change those coefficients which relate to probabilities of a person being employed or the occupation he's in. So we change the coefficients which relate to a labor market structure. Again, we have a new equation and a new difference, and this is the part that's explained by the labor market structure. For the tax benefit, again, we do the same. We change the psi parameter, but here we get all the coefficients from Euromod, as already said. And finally, for the demographic transformation, we change the x. So we do a reweighting technique to look how incomes, how demographics change from one year to another. Okay. Final piece of methodology is that we only focus on direct effects. We do this to reduce the path dependence of including them all at the same time. So we just look at the difference from changing one factor from the initial benchmark distribution. The problem is that when we add all of these together, there's a residual term, so that's always an issue, but this is the price we have to take to not have bad defendants. Okay. The data, we use EU Silk data. It's a famous survey of households within all of the European Union. Lithuania also has this. We focus on year 2007, 11, 15, and we look at two periods. One is before the crisis and during it, so 2007, 11. The other one is already after it. And we apply the equivalent scale of this. Now the results. Here we have growth incidence curves that show in the red line in the top, you see how much incomes changed of all of people compared to from the initial period of 2007 to 2015. So you see that in general, all people received quite a lot of income. People income grew from 20% to 35%, depending where you are. There's a bit higher growth at the top than the bottom. But another interesting thing that during the first period, 2007 to 11, almost nobody got any income, except the very poorest and the very richest a bit. But all of the growth came in 2011 to 15. Now let's go for the decomposition. Okay. One major factor that led to the increase of the price and of the total incomes was exactly this price and returns effect. We see that and it's very unequal as well. For the bottom, incomes only grew for about 10% during the whole period. And for the top, it increased about 2 times more. So we see that the way that wages and capital income formed, it was very favorable to the top. And almost all of the increase came from 2011 to the 15. There's a very counterbalancing effect coming from tax benefits. Interestingly, tax and benefits, according to this estimation, increased income about 40%. So that's very substantial over 8-year period. And income increased in both years, in 2007-11 and 11-15. However, in 2007-11, there was a higher increase for the bottom part of the distribution, so the poorest people gained more. And in the second period, 11 to 15, the richer people gained relatively more. So in the first, there was an equalizing effect. Second one, there was a de-equalizing effect coming from tax and benefits. And a much smaller but a very persistent effect was coming from demographics. So you can see that throughout the whole period, the bottom deciles usually lost income and the top gained some income. Market structure, there's relatively negligible and very unclear effect, so we don't really want to comment that now. We also have a table here looking at the Gini. So just a summary measure. You have three layers. So the top one is about market Gini, and you can see it rose by 4.2 during the whole period. Most of it came during the first part of the period. While disposable income, it changed just half, by 2.1, and most of it actually came in the first period. Actually, Gini was reduced, and in the second increased. And what this means is that, again, the tax and benefit policies were very helpful at the beginning to cushion all of this rise in market income inequality, but they were less able to do that in the future, so we have less increase after that. So main conclusions is that tax and benefit systems seem to accommodate quite rapid rise in income inequality in the first period, but was much less able to help in the second. But throughout this whole time, we also have a gradual effect coming from demographics effects to rising inequality in Lithuania. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nerijs. And we have, thank you very much again for the presentation. And the discussant is Anna Lukianova.
So I also would like to. I don't know. Okay, thank you. So I also would like to thank you for this presentation and, of course, for the work you have done, because I guess it was a very long and sometimes boring exercise because you have to estimate all those equations. I would like to say that it seems to me a very ambitious paper, because most of the papers we read on income inequality, they try to explain just how one factor contributes to the change in inequality. And this is the paper which tries to decompose the rise or the change in inequality into different factors, such as labor market structure, returns, demographics, and tax and benefits. So it's like, so could you give me? So this paper aims to give a comprehensive picture of the income distribution, income changes, and the changes in income inequality. And they choose Lithuania as a country to analyze. It's an interesting country because it's one of the most unequal countries in the European Union. Of course, by international standards, the level of inequality is pretty low in Lithuania. It's, at the best, a moderately unequal country. But it's still very interesting because it's small and open, and it's open economy in terms of the industrial structure, and it's sensitive to external effects, and its labor market, it's also very open as migration rates are very high. And the period under study is also very interesting because it captures global crisis and the recovery after crisis. And what are the findings? As I see them, the most important findings of this paper, the authors make distinction, at least in their last table, between market inequality in market incomes and inequality in disposable incomes. And they show that the trajectory of changes of those two types of inequality was quite different. For market incomes, the rise of inequality, it happened in the first half of the period, just during the crisis or shortly after the crisis, and demographic was the major driver of this increase. And the tax and benefit system actually managed to counterbalance this increase in inequality. And that is why the rise in disposable inequality was very low in the first period, but in the second some period there was a rise in inequality, and returns were the major contributor to this increase. But unfortunately, as we saw from the table, much of this overall increase in market income inequality remains unexplained. So what is the contribution of the paper, as I said? So the contribution is not methodological, and that is why in my comments I will not pay much attention to methodological issues, but you can see from this impressive presentation that there were a lot of equations estimated. But still there is some contribution that it applies the method originally developed for comparison between countries to changes over time within the same country. And another important contribution, as I think, it highlights the role played by tax and benefit system in combating the rise of inequality during major economic shocks in a very open economy. So we can expect that it can play a role in large economy or closed economy, but in the open economy it can play a role as well. So the method, it was quite well described, and there are also, I will only stop on potential problems which I see with the method, not with the method itself so much, but with the data they have. Though silk data were of fine quality, but the sample size is relatively small in the case of Lithuania. I looked at the page of the survey, it's like 9,000 individuals and 4,000 households, and some of your estimations are actually done for even smaller population subgroups. For example, for participation equations, you make separate estimations for men, single women, women in couples, and then these estimated coefficients, they are used at high-level calculations, so to say. And also to build counterfactuals. And so there are no standard errors in the paper at all, and probably for such a complex techniques it will be difficult to estimate standard errors, but still it would be interesting to see them. at least for decompositions. So here are my questions and suggestions. My first question and suggestion, and probably it was not clearly written in the paper, I don't know whether you actually use household size in your estimates of counterfactuals, because in your list of the variables you used in these demography transformations, the household size is not listed. In fact, household size is used as a parameter in the model as they calculate per adult equivalent income. They divide total household income by a square root of the household size. But as I see in descriptive statistics, most of comments actually, they come from the comparison between descriptive statistics and the table with decompositions. And in descriptive statistics, we see a sharp decline in the share of married individuals. And this can point potentially at a decrease in the household size, and that can be interesting to look at. And demography in the paper, it actually combines age and education. And as we see in the descriptive statistics, the share of those with tertiary education has been growing constantly over the period, but there is the large contribution on demography only in the first sub-period. Does it mean that the age is the measure factor and the demography component? And I was also surprised to see that there was a sizable lowering of income taxes in the second period, and that had no big effect on inequality. Tax and benefits, the whole component had no big effect on inequality in the second period. And I also see that labor market structure plays an equalizing role in your results. And this seems counterintuitive to me, because there were a huge fluctuation in the unemployment rate, and there was clear polarization of the occupational structure, with the growing share of those in high-skilled occupations. And here are two graphs. And this unemployment rate, the graph for unemployment rate, it is taken from your paper, and you see that was a huge increase in unemployment rate. And this is the second graph which I took from Eurostat, and these are about out-migration from Lithuania. And you see there are pretty much the same pictures. And so, but in your paper, these two things, they relate to different components. So immigration is in demography part, and unemployment in the labor market structure part. But the whole method is not causal, it's based on correlation, and I wonder whether you are able to distinguish between these two ethics in your method. And so descriptive statistics also reveals a substantial increase in the share of capital income recipients. And it would be interesting to see where the returns component, which was the main contributor to the inequality in the second sub-period, whether we can decompose it into the earnings effects and the effects of returns to capital. And so migration, it's several times repeated in the paper that migration is very important, but there is no any word of remittances. When people talk about migration and incomes, they normally talk about remittances. Probably it's not the point for Lithuania, but just to have knowledge about that. So the model, as I told you, is comprehensive. At least it presents to be comprehensive, but from the calculations we see that there is a huge unexplained component. And they don't comment much about this unexplained component, what actually, and also about interactions component, what in fact can be there. And so the measure which is used for decomposition is Gini, but as they mention in the paper, inequality mostly arose between the tails of the distribution. So it can be interesting to see the decomposition of measures which are more sensitive to changes in the tails of the distribution.
Thank you very much, Anna. So, Nerijs, do you want to answer or just to make comments?
Well, thank you for all the comments. Very nice of you. Some of these we're aware of. For example, that we would like to decompose some of these factors further, especially to take away the capital returns versus wage returns, and to separate the demographic effects. So this is our to-do list. As you mentioned, we have a major limitation of data. It's not so large. So we have a trade-off. Either we make some groups broader, so not focus, let's say, on incomes of men versus incomes of female, but assume they're similar, or we just disregard some. We might end up doing some more variations and just pick the one that seems to explain most, because yes, we're limited in this case. Household size is very interesting. We haven't tried it, but definitely it's worthwhile seeing. It might be just, again, correlated already with marriage, not marriage. So we might just use one or the other in the end. I don't know. And this unemployment, it's for us also very strange, because Lithuanians' unemployment did rise substantially, but the survey does not show this. So it might be either because the way we calculate unemployment is someone is unemployed if they did not get any income during the whole year. But official statistics show that unemployment is only someone who was unemployed during a month, not the whole year. So it might be that during the whole year, people got at least some income. So one thing we could just do is trying to redefine unemployed in different ways and see if that has an impact for this. Standard errors, Denise already has a method. She proposed to have this bootstrapping method. So we can do this as well at some point, but first we want to make sure everything else is in order. So, and then, because this is just very computation intensive. So that's the main issue. But once we have all the parts down, I think we can go ahead with this, and everything else I think we still have to think about it a bit more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nerijs. Now we have some time for, maybe a couple of questions or comments and answers too. Do you want to start?
Yeah. One short question, maybe not that much related to the paper, but well, all of the Eastern European countries, and particularly the Baltic states, are faced by strong demographic declines in the next, say, 5, 10 years, according to Eurostat scenarios, etc. Would your research suggest something like a policy option for that phase, or what could be expected in terms of inequality, wages, with respect to that kind of, expected demographic decline?
Right now we can't, because our demographic is just, it's a combination of several factors. But if we decompose demographic a bit more and we can see if it's because there's fewer people in the country that contributes inequality, then we could say a bit more. But the problem again that ideally for this migration scenario, we need very different data. We need to have a lot of information about those people who leave and who stay in the country. So, and all we see is that we just see either more people here or it's actually a representative sample, so you don't really even know if it's they left or if the whole sample size, not the whole sample, but the whole population shifted. So for this we need a very different study, I'm afraid. So we can't do so much, but we can just at least partly see that if this seems to be related to inequality or not, but not definitely.